When a woman slept with her dog in her bed for many months, she thought nothing of this completely innocent and adorable act. However, she suddenly discovered something terrifying that left her shaken to her very core. Since her childhood, Julia had always loved dogs. So, when she met a sweet German shepherd named Bronx in a local shelter, she decided to adopt him and welcome him into her newly bought apartment. After bringing Bronx home and introducing him to his new surroundings, Julia was delighted to see how quickly the dog adjusted to his new life. While he was at first scared and cautious, it wasn't too long until Bronx would playfully be running around the apartment, yelping, and enjoying his time in his forever home. Julia was delighted. This was exactly the kind of thing that she missed about owning a dog. However, the next morning, she woke up to an endurable surprise. Bronx was fast asleep by her side in bed. Initially, Julia ignored it, chalked it up to being a one-time incident, and gently ushered Bronx back to his own little sleeping spot on the fluffy rug near the bedroom door. But to her astonishment, the same thing happened over the next few days. No matter how much she tried to make Bronx understand that his place was on the rug, he would always make his way back onto the bed. However, Julia couldn't bring herself to tell Bronx off or punish him for his seemingly innocent habit. Instead, she gradually came to accept it as a charming quirk of her beloved pet. Besides, it was nice that the two of them felt so comfortable together. For the next few weeks, life continued to progress smoothly for Julia and her furry companion. There were no hiccups, and everything was happy and fun. Taking care of Bronx became something she found a lot of joy and fulfillment in. However, something strange started to happen. Julia started feeling extremely exhausted and lethargic in a way that she had never felt before. She was usually an active and healthy woman, so this change of mood was not like her. Even getting out of bed became a strenuous and arduous task, despite the fact that she had always been a morning person who could easily wake up without an alarm clock. Something really had changed. Julia, at first, ignored it and thought it was probably a result of her monotonous work routine. After all, work really can get boring and drag your life down sometimes. But Julia carried on with her life, doing her best to push through her fatigue state. However, as her well-being continued to spiral downwards and she got weaker and weaker, she decided it was time to head to the doctor to see if he could diagnose her. Visiting a doctor, she underwent a series of tests and procedures, but they found nothing out of the ordinary. Confused and frustrated, Julia mentioned her usual sleeping arrangement with Bronx, hoping it might provide a clue. She wasn't sure what kind of clue it would offer, but still it was worth a shot. And in fact, without a moment's hesitation, the doctor came to the conclusion that Julia was more than likely allergic to dog hair. Because of this, he prescribed her several medications to suppress her allergic reactions. On top of that, the doctor advised her to minimize contact with Bronx until her symptoms had lessened. It was strange, and Julia didn't quite understand how she was allergic to dog hair now, when for the longest time, she had been absolutely fine around dogs. The doctor patiently explained that these kinds of allergies can develop at any time in life, so it wasn't a massive shock that someone who was once so close and fond of dogs would now develop an unfortunate and ill-timed allergic reaction to them. Understanding that the doctor knew best and that she should follow his advice, Julia returned home and diligently stuck to her courses of medication. She even tried to persuade Bronx to stop sleeping in her bed, though that was far easier said than done. He desperately wanted to lay there with her, but Julia had to stay strong and keep him out of the bed. For a few days, she experienced some relief, and Bronx eventually started to obediently sleep in the corridor outside of the bedroom door, as instructed. Admitting to herself that the doctor was probably right and that she was allergic to dog hair, Julia eagerly completed the course of medication in hopes of reclaiming her once energetic self. Unfortunately, the relief was short-lived. Bronx, being the cheeky dog that he was, would occasionally sneak back onto the bed at night, and Julia's symptoms returned with a vengeance. As quickly as she had gotten better, she spiraled once more. Moreover, her weakness, lethargy, and apathy worsened, turning her once pleasant life into a living nightmare. She nearly lost her job several times due to her tired demeanor. Julia was left feeling perplexed and desperate, unsure of where to turn for help. But this time, even Bronx was starting to show signs of discomfort. He walked with a strange gait and would always curl up with his hind legs close to his body when he laid down next to Julia. Something was up, and she needed to find out what it was. But she was simply too lethargic to even go to the vet and had to take an entire week off work. She thought a period of rest would help her get back on her feet, but unbeknownst to her, she was seriously risking her life. Thankfully, hope arrived in the form of a veterinarian friend who paid her a visit, deeply concerned by Julia's deteriorating state. And upon learning that it all began after she adopted Bronx, the veterinarian asked Julia to bring the dog to his clinic to confirm or dispel his suspicions. With no other options, Julia reluctantly agreed, hoping for a breakthrough. He ran all kinds of tests and checks on Bronx and left no stone unturned in his search for answers. Several days later, when the veterinarian finally called with the test results, he revealed that Julia had contracted a dangerous disease from Bronx called brucellosis, which would have been impossible to detect without specific research. It was a disease that had been hidden in plain sight, and that he had probably contracted at the shelter. The close contact she had had with her beloved pet, particularly during the night times when they would share a bed, had unknowingly exposed her to this nasty condition. The veterinarian urgently prescribed a strong course of antibiotics for both Julia and Bronx, emphasizing that had she waited any longer, the consequences would have been dire. Julia was terrified by the revelation, but at the same time grateful that they had gotten to the root of the problem. In dogs, brucellosis can cause several reproductive issues. Bronx was having trouble walking because of swelling around his privates, but thankfully, the disease was still in the early stages, and he would heal completely with no consequences provided he took the antibiotics. But in people, brucellosis can turn into meningitis, encephalitis, endocarditis, and osteomyelitis. These are respectively inflammations of the meninges, brain, heart, and bones. The same disease can also cause a strong depression, of which Julia's lethargic state was just the first step. She had truly risked her life. Following the veterinarian's instructions to the letter, Julia immediately started taking the medication. She also made sure that Bronx took his medicine too. Over time, the powerful antibiotics brought her significant relief, leaving her feeling less tired and weary. Subsequent tests several weeks later confirmed that the disease had completely gone from her system. On the day she learned that, Julia finally heaved a sigh of relief and tightly embraced Bronx, who inadvertently had almost cost her life. She was not angry, she was just relieved, and from that day forward, she allowed her beautiful dog to resume his place by her side on the big soft bed, grateful for his unconditional love despite the strange and unforeseen consequences. From that experience, Julia learned the importance of taking necessary precautions when owning a pet, even if it meant confronting unforeseen challenges and unexpected changes. As she regained her strength and recovered from the ordeal, her bond with Bronx only grew stronger. They became each other's pillars of support, forever cherishing the invaluable lessons they had learned throughout their terrifying and mind-boggling journey together. So now it's over to you. What did you think of this incredible story? Have you ever heard of such a rare and unusual condition as the one that Julia contracted? Would you have gotten rid of your dog if you'd suspected they were the cause of your suffering? As always, we love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comments section down below.